Key stats for picking a winner on the PGA Tour, the Rocket Mortgage Classic, where last year Ricky got back into the winner's circle, and Tony Finau in the summer of 2022 was absolutely on fire. What do those guys have in common? They all putted phenomenally. Last year in 2023, the top 5 players in putting at the Rocket Mortgage all finished in the top 10 of the event. So key stats here, Benny B. What does that mean this week for Rocket Mortgage?
It means it's a shootout. Once again, you've got to make some putts if you want to be at the top of the leaderboard. 2 of the winners in the last 5, obviously, since we've been starting this event, were also top 5 putting. They're all were in the top 20 putting. You have to make hay when the sun shines, if you will. You have to give yourself a lot of chances. You have to make them. If you don't, you fall behind. Shootouts in the summer, we're used to those. We're excited for them. We had one last week at the Travelers. It's going to roll on. If you're not fast, if you're not foot to the floor from the word go, you get left behind and you'll be gone.
This key stats segment, by the way, folks, it works. It's proven. The data is true. Last week, Ben, you get credit for the top 20 that I picked Tom Hoagie for on the On the Range show on Golf Channel, because Tom Hoagie was 3rd in our big stat last week at Travelers of strokes gained approaching 125 to 150. That was the one that you nailed down. I picked Hoagie for that. Thank you, folks. This does work. I don't know why I got the celebration going on behind me. It's very exciting because, you talk about putting, Ben, but there's also another angle to it, because it's not like just because you're putting well means you're going to play well. This is our big stat this week.
100%. Look, all the winners in the top 4 for strokes gained tee to green, because as it's a shootout, you have to give yourself chances. You have to give yourself many chances. If you don't shoot 500-600 a day, you're gone. You got no chance. So to do that, you have to be on song tee to green. You can see Tony Finau led the field tee to green when he won in 2022. Ricky Fowler was 3rd last year. The other winners all inside the top 4, as I said. So if you don't give yourself a lot of chances and a chance to climb up the leaderboard, then of course you need to make those chances, as we talked about with the putting. If you can't do that, you're left behind, you're no chance, you might as well not be there. So get ready to go low, and go low every round of the tournament.
Is it more so approaching the green and hitting the green as opposed to maybe off the tee? Because the numbers that I was looking at earlier today, off the tee really seem pretty irrelevant. You're not going to have much trouble on this course. Around the green was also hit or miss. It was those guys approaching the green, to me, that made the most sense when we're talking tee to green here.
In the first 2 years, it was definitely sort of bomb and gouge, right? You just smashed the ball as far as you could, and you hope that you could just get onto the greens from there. They've made slight changes at sort of tree situations over the last few years to make that a little less of the case. Obviously, being long never hurts, but it really is the approach side of the things, as you mentioned, because if you're coming into these greens with shorter clubs, great, you're going to get closer, but that's the key factor. You need to be in tight. You need to give yourself multiple chances at birdie. And you need to limit the mistakes as well. Like I know Tony Finau, he went through the whole week with, I think, 1 bogey when he won. Like you cannot make mistakes. You've got to survive. A bogey feels like a double or a triple in some cases, because everyone's going so low, right? So you need to be on song. You need to be a great golfer all 4 days.
He won at 26 under par. That's the record here since the Rocket Mortgage started in 2019 at Detroit Golf Club. So we're going to go through the course here and some of the specific course nuggets that could help you make your picks. And Ben, outside of it being a birdie fest, you found something very interesting on surviving the par 3s. What does that mean?
Specifically, yes, the 9th and the 11th hole there, you can see they play over par. In a shootout week, you think, every hole's easy. These guys smash it. They can do whatever they want. Well, not the case. There are actually 4 holes that over the 5 years have played to average over par. 2 of those, as you see here, are the 9th and the 11th hole that are par 3s. If you can get through those without making major mistakes, you're going a long way to getting towards the winner's circle at Detroit Golf Club. Finau and the others, I think none of them played it worse than 1 over through the 4 rounds, some of them better. Again, it's survival, because what I mentioned earlier was if you make a bogey or a double, they feel like triples and quads because everyone else is making birdies everywhere. You need to survive those holes. Specifically 9 and 11, and then you're going to get to it, I know, but the other 2 holes have averaged over par are 6 and 12. So if you think 9, 10, 11, 12 on the weekend, that is the key run for those guys in contention, right? They need to survive 9, 11 and 12, and maybe try to get a birdie on 10. Otherwise, things could get rough from there.
So if these par threes are playing over par, maybe you pick a guy who does really well in par three scoring. So something new we're going to do this week. Yeah, par three scoring. That might be your Tom Hoagie liaison that we had last week, right? What we're going to do from now on Key Stats is the old debate of course history versus recent form. If either one matters, or if neither one matters, or Ben, if both matter. So every week what we're going to do is we're going to go through the last 3 winners of each event and how they did on that course before they won and how they did the 5 events leading up to that win that year. So our 3 guys that we're looking at this week for history versus course form: Ricky last year, Tony Finau 2022, and Cam Davis in 2021. I would say this chart, white meaning their course history before they won here, and blue being their recent form, the 5 events right before they won that event that year. I'd say course history means literally absolutely nothing, Benny.
I wouldn't say nothing, but I would definitely say it's way down.
Okay.
It's way down from what before, because there are some players who we'll get to a little later that have decent course history and that I think that might not necessarily win this week, but that will factor in sort of the top place markets. But if you're looking for a winner, you're 100% right, Chris. It's got way less to do. This course, this slide says it all. Miscut coming in, 53rd coming in before they won. They didn't necessarily need to know the course to play well there, but they did need to be playing half decent golf. Like you see, Tony came off a win, and Ricky Fowler came off quite a few, 4 in a row inside the top 13. The outlier there being Cam Davis, but I can speak to that. Cam Davis is a summer golf player. He was struggling that year with a few ailments and a few issues, and he'd finally gotten over that and was able to sort of come in fresh and play really well, and actually played really well from that moment on. So yes, he's an outlier, but I still believe what you're saying is correct. I think recent form is where you need to look at this week. So you're looking at guys who played well over the last month or so. You're trying to factor in, though, fatigue as well, because we've had some big events. So maybe not necessarily someone who's played 5, 6, 7, 8 in a row, including our favourite for this week. Tom Kim's playing his 9th in a row.
Wow.
Something to think about whether you think he can maintain. Look, he's been playing great, but will he maintain it? I'm more looking at guys that have not necessarily played every week, but could be. Look at who's another guy that played well last week. Cam Young shoots 59.
Right.
Was second here a couple of years ago. Right, he was second here a couple of years ago. That's the sort of thing you're looking at. Okay, he's sort of bringing in some form. I do think that you need to look at that. So if you want to look at the stats, you're looking at recent form. You're trying to find those nuggets like we just threw at you, like par 3 scoring, strokes gained putting, strokes gained tee to green. Marry all those up on PGATour.com and Golfbet.com and figure out where the players lie.
Guys who are used to getting in those birdie fests, exactly what we saw last week. So it brings us to our strokes gained, our top 5 players who are in the field this week.
Look at this.
I know, and it's vast different numbers of odds. My boy Alex Noren's on there. Taylor Moore and Taylor Pendrith, 2 Canadians, 20 miles from the border, Canada, is from this golf course, by the way. Strokes gained, these are the guys who are on the field per round since this thing started in 2019. These are your top 5 guys in strokes gained per round. What stands out to me is a guy I know you were pretty high on beforehand was Chris Kirk, but for me, it's like Chris Kirk, where has he been since January? He's been nowhere.
I'm going to throw this out at you because it's funny, but Taylor Moore is a proud Texan, so you've given him Canadian citizenship. That's awesome for him and awesome for the rest of them. But Taylor Pendrith is definitely...
I had Nick Taylor on the mind.
Taylor, no worries. All good. Taylor Moore will have a chuckle about that.
I'm going to edit that out.
All good. But
I had Nick Taylor on the mind. All right, go ahead.
These guys are on fire at this course, as you said. Taylor Pendrith really pops to me there because obviously he's playing sort of career best, has had a win this season, and clearly likes this joint. Definitely on approach and putting. He is the surprise for me. I had a quick look at strokes gained putting this morning for all players and saw he was right up there on the list. If you had asked me a year ago if that was going to be where he was on the list, I wouldn't have said so. So that's good news for Taylor Pendrith fans and all those actual Canadian fans out there. Chris Kirk is definitely on my radar as a long shot this week. He's just the sort of the consummate professional, the grinder that knows how to sort of stay in the mix at certain courses. And this is one where he's been throwing up the odd low round and doing really well in the process. So I think that his well-rounded game, if he has his putter on, he needs it to be firing. If it is firing, he's a good chance, especially in the long shot category. And your man, Alex Noren, you better be on him this week.
I'm not.
You better be on him.
I don't think I am. Does that mean you are going to be?
No, I was going to leave him for you.
See, that means it's not a good pick.
Yes. Well, I think with Alex, to me, is always a place market guy.
Okay.
Right? Not
top
necessarily
50, top
a win
20.
guy.
Which might be minus money at this point.
Right. So
Right.
if you maybe it's a top 10, maybe you give him a bit more love at top 10 and see how you go. He's also trying to, believe it or not, he's not in the Open yet.
Okay.
Despite how well he's been playing. So there's Open qualifying on the line again. I think that he might be sort of jazzed for that to try to make his move there. And Troy Merritt, well, before we talked about how course familiarity and course history is not that important, well, for him, maybe it is. For this one guy, because he's in the last 4 years, he's been in the top 20, including a playoff loss here, despite not playing well in and around it, right? So he just happens to be a guy that, for whatever reason, loves this place, loves this course. Last week, I said that Akshay Bhatia was your long shot to sprinkle across all markets, outright right through to top 30. There's a chance Troy Merritt might be your top 40, top 30, top 20 guy this week, right? Like, you're going to get really good value for that, given how he plays at this course. You know that, look, he's been playing terribly of late. Maybe that's a bit of a risk, but it's also a risk worth potentially thinking about because of the plus money odds.
You brought up Akshay. I think it's a great thing to end on as we start to marinate roundtable on Tuesday and who people might be picking based on all these different stats that we just threw out there. Think about Akshay this last weekend. Think about Tom Kim, and think about Cam Young. All three of them are going to be near the top on the odds board this week. And if you want to call a spade, they are three of the big names this week playing. Will Zalatoris might not be in the form or the health that we want him to be. You're looking at three guys who all had a chance to win last weekend. Yeah. And ironically, all three of them are playing this weekend as probably the three favorites. On Tuesday, Ben, I want to talk about, does that automatically mean they're going to do well this week? Because on its face, I would say no as of right now.
I'm going to say this, though. I think one of them will finish in the top 5.
Okay.
I haven't worked out which that'll be, but I think one of them will fire again. Again, we talked about form coming in. I do think that's important, but it is hard to maintain a 20+ under pace weeks in a row. I am probably going to be the guy that says to fade Tom Kim, even though I loved what he did last week and thought he was brilliant. But I just 9 weeks in a row, that's got to hit you at some point, especially if you've had that chance. You're in the playoff with Scheffler, you're feeling like you've got to run, and then you've got to come down from that. I just see him having one sort of, I guess, poor round, maybe even the first round, and then being too far back to chase, right? Bhatia, he might be a little different. He's one I have to think on and marinate on. And Cam Young is on my radar, even though
he's a birdie fest guy. He's a birdie fest
guy. You don't necessarily think of him as a great putter, right? Like, in general.
He made a lot of putts last week, though. Like, surprisingly, a lot of putts.
Surprisingly, a lot of putts. Reasonably decent in putting last week, and you've got to think he's taking confidence from what he did. You've got to think that, without being necessarily as, I guess, gassed from the furnace of it all, right? Like, the first 2 rounds were not superstar rounds for him, not using a lot of energy. 59 obviously does do wonders for you. Had a chance early on Sunday, but ultimately was going to be really tough to win from where he was because of what he did the first 2 rounds. Maybe this week is where we finally see him do well, and it would actually be kismet because our fearless leader Will Gray is often a well-earned break this week. He loves Cam Young, picks him a million times. He'll probably win while Will Gray is not on the planet, and that would be brilliant.
But let's be honest, Will's not going to pick him anyway because all of us are too stubborn. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but when you blacklist a player, they do not play well until you have completely thrown them off your radar. And then they always come back to bite you because that's what we love about golf gambling, Benny.
Rocket science.
Rocket science at the Rocket Mortgage this week on Golfbet.
Bye.